my shorts, my children! The institution that is the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror shall continue with another issue for us to look at. There are only 2 stories in this one, with one parody taking up much of the length of the book. We open with Homer Simpson being dragged into a mental hospital, ranting that the world is in danger. He's led past other unwell people too. The people who believe they're Napoleon. The people who believe they're Jesus. The concession stand at the reception desk, all that. He's met by Dr. Marvin Monroe, who wants to know what it is that he thinks happened to himself, leading us to a flashback. Unfortunately, he enters the wrong flashback and has to redirect himself to the correct one. We go back a week. Homer had left town for a combination homebrew show and a legal street fighting competition, no doubt to dethrone M. Bison, but had forgotten his wallet and the tickets, and the fact that the show had happened the week before. As such, he heads back to Springfield and runs into Kearney, who claims that his father isn't really his father, that he's an imposter, citing how he has not spanked or abused him at all. Homer doesn't believe it or notice how many people seem to be acting blankly and without emotion. Returning home, Bart and Lisa say that none of their friends want to play outside or do anything. Lisa acknowledges that her generation must be achieving adulthood because they are getting much more tired easily. Bah, I'm much older than I look, my children, and I've got to tell you, I'm in my prime. You sleep most of the year, and you suck all of the year. While she and Bart go off to take a nap, Barney calls Homer to his place to take a look at something he's found. A pod person growing in his yard that looks just like him. The pod also has a bite taken out of it. Barney was hungry. Homer realizes that it is a space pod, and they need to find a pod person to give them expository dialogue about the situation. They yell out to find someone to give them said exposition, Luigi Risotto, the Italian chef, providing it. Their pods land on a planet, replace the people on it with emotionless replicas, and spread sterility and tranquility throughout the universe by doing so. Barney fell asleep during the exposition because it was so boring and is replaced by a pod. The pod people want to convince Homer that being a pod is great, providing a pamphlet, an oversized novelty finger, and his own pod. Homer thinks emotions are great, and given how much I laugh, you can tell I agree. But what really gets him to go against the pods is how he'll never care about beer ever again. Well, his family is in there too, but beer is the tipping point. Well, that and wrestling. He goes home and discovers Lisa and Bart have already become pod people thanks to their nap, Marge believing him about them being replaced because of how well behaved they are. They head to the Quickie Mart to get supplies to go on the run, but find everyone there already a pod, and the store distributing more pods. Also, Richard Nixon is there for some reason, go figure. The two try to blend in by acting emotionless, but Homer can't sustain the illusion when he states his exuberance for donuts, forcing them to flee into the hills. Marge, exhausted, falls asleep and is replaced by a pod person. After briefly meeting up with someone fleeing a zombie apocalypse in Shelbyville, Homer goes into the highway to try to warn them about the approaching pod people. Fortunately, the crackpot journalist convention is there, and everyone starts listening to him, but the police stop him and start distributing pods, leading to the beginning of the story. Soon, other members of the police report that indeed the pod people are real, what with pods found on the freeway, Kent Brockman reporting on it, and Barney himself coming in proclaiming that he's a pod person. Dr. Monroe believes him now, but says it doesn't matter because he, as a Venusian, has been working with people to infiltrate Earth for decades, and they'll stop the pods. But then one police officer reveals that they are 2 Martians in a suit, and another is a robot ghost clone. The inmates in the asylum are let out, proclaiming many outrageous things, including Sideshow Bob, who says that they're all actually characters in a comic book. They laugh at that, being the most absurd of claims. Then he shows them how he can move from panel to panel, and even points out the reader, Dr. Monroe begging said reader not to close the comic, or else they'll cease to exist. That's okay, since Dr. Monroe would die off screen anyway. We then get a short story to close out the comic. Homer demanding half the kids' candy to their frustration. Settling in to watch TV with Marge, he's tormented by images of a donut being hacked to pieces, Duff beer being poured down the drain, and other such monstrous concepts. Professor Frink, owning a TV repair service of course, is called in and he attempts to track the transmission that seems to be on every channel. However, he exclaims that he needs to leave. The show is coming from inside the house. And of course it was! Bart, Lisa, and Maggie filming those moments and sending them to the TV.
Remember, my children, protect your candy from those who would take it, or else they can eat your shorts.